Okay, I'm going to put the wood on here, and we'll worry about lighting a little bit later. But what we're going to do is, once we get this surface on, I wanted to step into another scene and give you a run through of how the dynamics are set up. Now, on a scene like this, the dynamics actually take a little bit to calculate on my system. So we're going to set up kind of a dummy scene to show you how that works, just to expedite time. I'm sure those of you with nice Intel processors and 64-bit machines can process it out a lot faster. So, all right. So for this, let's go down to I call it the floor, but it's really the alley. I don't know why I did that. Okay. And we've got that alley there, and what we want to do basically is for the wood floor right here, the surface we made, under color, select texture, hit this little guy and hit load image. And in your images folder, there is a wood, Dan Wood folder, Dan Wood image, that is. We're going to load that, and that is going to be just placed on there. Now this should be slats of wood if you have one, or you can actually make beveled polygons and put that on there. But for right now, we're just going to put a little bit of wood in there. Okay. So I got a little wood texture on there. And once we put some light and some shading on, we'll do that right now because I don't like how that looks. And we're going to put an infinite light. So it just comes from a general direction. Shadow type, we're going to put hard shadows on. And the light, well, just make it a little bit warmer. Like that. Kind of nice. Okay. And then we're going to select the rotate tool, and we're just going to rotate from over here, kind of like that. All right. So now it's a lot nicer looking. Okay, and then I'm going to go save the scene. I'm going to say File, New Scene. Okay, now let's take a step back and talk about the dynamics a little bit. All right, and what we're going to do is simply just add a cube right here, and I'm going to flatten it out, lengthen it out, widen it out, and we'll move it. Okay, so there's a ground surface. In order for dynamics to work, every object has to be editable, has to be a polygon. So we're going to make sure we hit that guy right there. That's step one. So then, if we add another cube, for instance, right over here, kind of like this, put a cube in there, editable, and then we add maybe a sphere, kind of like this, something like that. Okay, and we make that editable. And let's add even a triangle. There we go. All right, pyramid. And we're going to pull that guy over here. But this one we're going to rotate. And we're going to make that editable. Okay, so I got a few simple objects in there. And what we want to do is just set up a really quick dynamic scene. Okay, and in fact, while I do that, I can take this guy and push him here like this. There. That's a little bit better. Okay. Now, in order for these to actually all collide, they have to have dynamics applied. Easy enough. So let's select the ground. Let's call that ground. And I'm going to right-click on it, and under the Dynamics tab, there is the Rigid Body Dynamic. So you add that tag. When you add that, you get a nice set of tools down here in the Attributes Manager. And all you need to worry about at this point is collision detection. Turn it on. Okay, so one more thing we got to set on the ground, but I'm going to come back to that, and you'll see why. For the cube, right-click, Dynamics, tell it to be dynamic, and make it fully collide. Sphere, right-click, Dynamics, add dynamic, rigid body, not soft. And for this, because it's round, we can go ellipse. Okay, and a pyramid, right-click, Dynamics, rigid body, and make it collide. Okay, so everything now has a dynamic tag on it, and it's collidable, if that's a word. The next thing you need to do is solve all these. Okay, the system doesn't know to actually calculate the dynamics just because you put those on. So under Dynamics, add a solver object. And like your hyperNURBs and your loft NURBs and the other tools we've used, you have to take your polygons and drop them inside there. Okay, but we need to go one step further because we want to calculate some gravity. So we'll go to Dynamics and add gravity, and we'll put that in the solver as well. Now for the gravity, we want it to be actual gravity, negative 9.8. And actually, you don't really need a negative. You just put 9.8 because it's a strength. Okay, so 9.8. Negative, though, on the y, minus 1 meter. And if I click the play button, everything falls out of view. Well, that's no good. Well, I mentioned we're coming back to the ground. The reason is, under the mass value, the ground has a mass of 1. The ground needs to be 0 so that it stays put. So there's no mass, so there's nothing to actually fall. And now we do it, all the dynamics calculate. Okay? So it's really that simple to actually set up dynamics. Now, when we have a more complex scene like the bowling cube, the bowling balls and the pins, it's not going to work as well as these cubes. There's other variables, as you can see here, that make like this cube stick. They're static values for the ground that we can set up and change. So now let's load our simple bowling ball scene, and we'll set up the dynamics the same way. We'll run through it one more time.